Just get good is a phrase that gets tossed about a lot online. I've heard it in discussions about Silksong, about FPS games, and frequently about the Huntress in Dead by Daylight. Certainly it's true in the sense that practice is the only thing that will train your muscle memory. To be honest though, I think that people talk about Hatchets in an overly simplistic way, as if this isn't one of the most deceptively complex killers and powers in the entire game. Just hit your shots is pretty reductive when there are so many kinds of shots you have to learn to hit. When I was learning Hunters though, the tips often boil down to teaching you about one way to aim and nothing else. It wasn't until I broke through the 5 tips you need to know layer and discovered creators like Dadbod Shuffle and NymAm that I began to realize how much goes into being effective with your hunting hatchets in Dead by Daylight. When you keep trying the same shot over and over again and it keeps missing, you can start to feel like it's you that's the problem, when in reality you just need a bigger repertoire of shots. No type of hatchet shot is perfect for every situation, and that's why I wanted to create a comprehensive guide to the types of shots you can do on the Huntress. I'll be covering the 2 main factors that play an element in every hatchet shot you throw, and then go over more complex types of shots in the 3rd section. If you find this helpful, go ahead and consider following me on Twitch, where you can see many of these shots in practice. With that out of the way, let's get into the gory details. After you click mouse 2 to bring up your hatchet, you have an important decision to make. The longer you hold that button down, the more charge you'll accumulate, and the faster your hatchet will travel. When you hear this audio cue, which by the way your survivors can also hear, your hatchet is wound up to full charge and will travel at its maximum velocity. This breaks every hatchet into 3 basic categories: charged shots, partial charged shots, and uncharged, also called Lob Shots. While you are still learning Huntress, you should stick to either fully charged or Lob Shots, as having to account for partial charge will make it much more difficult to learn the Huntress's muscle memory. Note that the faster your hatchet goes, the harder it will be for the survivors to react to the shot. Remember that Hatchet's charge is the only factor affecting its speed, and it's otherwise perfectly consistent. That is, so long as you don't indulge in the dark arts. If you equip Rose Root or Yellowed Cloth, I cannot help you. You're on your own. Orbitals won't work, lineups won't work, nothing will work. If you want to use these add-ons, you're playing a different game than other Huntresses, and you should never ever take them off. Retreat in your dark, lonely cave and never come back. You are not a hit scan killer, but Anna's cannon of an arm makes her charged shots the closest thing you have to a rifle. This is your bread and butter. Learn to use charged shots well and survivors will despise you. So much so that holding Harry is a euphemism for charge lovers because of how effective fully charging your hatchets can be. Even ignoring how good it makes your projectile, walking at a survivor with your hatchet up does a lot of good things for you. Number 1, it can be used for zoning, which is when you threaten a survivor away from an area by holding up your hatchet. But it also makes the survivor not know when you're going to release it, causing them to go into a frantic juke and increases the chances of them fucking up and becoming predictable. As opposed to a lob shot, which is quick but slow, a charge shot is cumbersome but lightning fast. This makes them difficult to dodge and react to, especially when they didn't know they were being targeted in the first place. Hint, try charging around walls, it's really good. Charge shots are best used in open areas when you have a lot of time to land your hit, or when you have a survivor backed into a corner. When you don't though, charge shots start to show their weaknesses. Unless you have the add-on Shiny Pin, Anna is incredibly slow when she has her hatchet rage, crawling along at a actual snail's pace of 3.17 meters per second. On many maps, and especially against good survivors, this makes it very easy for them to duck around cover and completely deny you line of sight. Huntress needs to stay mobile to keep up with the elusive prey, and charge shots simply don't have that maneuverability a lot of the time. With ore perks and the Atom Glow concoction, you can somewhat negate this downside by charging and lining up shots through walls. Man, I love getting to wall hack without actually cheating. Charge shots aren't the tool for every situation, but man, they're the perfect tool for the right situation. I love myself a lob. You don't always have all the time in the world to charge and land a perfect shot. especially around obstacles, on tight loops, and in situations where a survivor is in an area with a lot of cover. A quick and dirty lob shot can be the difference between a 4 out and a 4K. The two main strengths of a lob are its speed to throw, not the travel velocity, which is actually really slow, and its deceptiveness. When you're playing around a pallet, a lob shot with Flower Bushka can be no joke one of the most powerful killer powers in the entire game. You wouldn't think a measly 10% hatchet pickup speed would mean much, but it means your hatchets essentially function like a nemesis whip, without the need to infect first. Beyond just how fast a lob is to bring out, they also got that curve. Hatchet velocity doesn't just affect how quickly your axe hits the target, but also how extremely it curves down. Fully charged hatchets do still have a curve to them, but it's so minimal that few maps in the game are big enough for you to take advantage of the curve. With a lob, the arc is extreme enough to land a hit over cover where you otherwise couldn't, regardless of how close the wall is to you. In maps littered with bullshit, precise lobs are your best friend. Try using lob shots to try and catch your opponent off guard and vary up how much you charge your hatchets. The less predictable your hatchets are, the harder they are to dodge. Do not, under any circumstances, only throw lob shots. Because of their slow travel speed, they are much easier to dodge, especially when predictable, and you sacrifice the security of aiming with techniques like the steady shot, where you typically have to wait with your hatchet raised to land them. But yeah, lobs are pretty amazing. Some of my favorite ever shots were uncharged hatchets, including, by the way, every orbital. As they say, slow and deadly wins the race. This category of shots is rather vibes based, and so I don't have much advice for them. In all ways, half-powered shots are simply a mix between charge shots and lob shots. That said, they are by no means useless or to be avoided. While yes, it's important to have your muscle memory down for charge and lob shots, once you do, you can get a ton of value out of half-powered shots. Varying up velocity can allow you to get some pretty insane shots over cover by changing the curve of the hatchet. I mean, think about it. Huntress is basically just drawing a quadratic equation with every use of her power, and half-powered shots give you much more control over the arc of your hatchets compared to lobs and charge shots. Despite the potential, this part of her kit is fairly untraveled territory as far as I'm aware. If you want to be the half-power hero, shit, go for it. Just don't expect much help along the way. A neat thing about half-powered shots is that, while your shots will still be pretty fast, the survivors won't hear the shing sound that they do when you're fully charged. If you charge around a corner, they might not even know you're readying a shot at all. As far as practical situations that call for half-powered shots, often necessary when trying to hit shots around a tile, or when you simply don't have time to fully charge your hatchet but still want to wait for the survivor to dodge into you. The survivors are running away after all, and a full 3 seconds can be plenty of time for any pink-haired Joe Schmo to find a wall to stand behind. So yeah, half-powered shots are the hipsters of the hatchet world, but they have their place in a good huntress's repertoire. So every hatchet has its charge, but you've also got to take that lovely little hatchet and find a way to get it into a meat bag. There are many different ways of doing this, the general categories of which I've covered here. Note that these can be used regardless of hatchet charge, but that certain shots favor certain charges. Leading shots are the most standard technique for getting a hatchet into a survivor. This technique involves aiming where the survivor will be by the time the hatchet travels through the air, rather than where they currently are. Timing will be dependent on distance, angle in relation to you, so like which angle they're running at compared to you, whether the survivor's walking, running, or crouching, any hindered or haste effects they might have, whether you're on cover or below them. It's incredibly important to note that this is by far the riskiest type of hatchet shot to just go for. Especially if your shot is a lob shot, experienced survivors will dodge a leading shot almost 100% of the time. Only go for a simple leading shot if the survivor doesn't know where you are, or if the survivor is just holding W and not dodging. Just be sure to sometimes go for leading shots so they don't, just hold forward and never dodge at all. Steady shot. Steady shots are by far the most consistent way to land hatchets. Imagine most survivor dodges as a sine wave. This varies depending on the survivor. Some wait and dodge, some dodge only when you throw a hatchet, some dodge more to one side than the other, some micro dodge with very subtle movements, some double dodge. But its most basics, a serpentine survivor will follow a sine curve. By doing this and varying up when exactly they change direction, it's exceptionally difficult to land a leading shot on the survivor. So instead what you do is you pick a line right through the center of where you're dodging, and you wait until they're falling back into that line, until their serpentine curve leads back into your line that you're holding steady on, thus called the name Steady Shot. To my knowledge, I've come up with this name, so don't expect to look up, Hatchet shots, Steady Shot Huntress, and have 4 billion results. But this is a very common tactic. By the way, used on almost all killers with a distance attack. And it's very effective. It's very effective. You really can't hit a leading shot on a survivor that's juking you like this, but you can almost always hit a steady shot. So, yeah, this is really it. You can hit a steady shot with a lob or a charge. It really depends on what your survivor is doing, so you need to adapt. But by far, the most important shot for a new huntress to learn is the steady shot. So get this under your tool belt and start killing people with it. When you press the button to release a hatchet, it doesn't actually automatically throw it. You have a small window where you can flick your mouse to where the survivor is, relying on split-second reactions. This can allow you to adapt to survivor movement, like a last-second juke. It can allow you to, for them to not know where they're aiming and you flick to them at the last second. It allows you to hit windows just after you land the corner. Sometimes you just can't, you can't go steady with it. You don't have time. So flicks are very helpful there. My advice would not be to rely too heavily on flicks, but it's a helpful skill for improvising on the fly or for securing a hit on a particularly slippery survivor. When nothing else seems to land, a flick might just save your skin. Another fun trick is to use flicks to switch targets, like I said before, aiming at one survivor before flicking your aim to another in the distance. It's a subtle but effective mind game, especially since players in a swift. This is really more of a general aiming thing, just like steady shot, you could, call that the sort of guitar hero aim. This is the alternative. It relies on sweeping your mouse to them rather than waiting for them to come to you. This is actually more effective for people that are moving directly away from you because you don't have to account for left or right distance. But yeah, flicks are awesome. Definitely use them, utilize them, but don't go for them as always. Like any of these other shots, they are a tool in your toolbox. Orbital in the sky, you are about to die. You'll catch an axe right in your back, a reading rainbow. I can kill anyone. Okay, that's enough of that. Reads, taken from fighting game technology, are when you anticipate what your opponent is about to do, and you take an action that counters theirs before they've even made it. In Huntress terms, this involves predicting sudden survivor jukes, and pre-aiming where they're going to juke instead of the line they're running on. While a flick is split-second reaction, a read is calculated. You can think of this as similar to a steady shot, but instead of hitting them here when they return back to the center line, you hit them here when they dodge out. This counters erratic jukers that wait for their throw, but requires you to have a pretty good understanding of what your opponent is about to do in order to land it. You kind of have to download your survivor. So this is a lot better in the late game, and also can be used on people that are about to leave a gen. Usually they will run basically perpendicular to the side of the gen that they're working on. So if they're working on the right side of the gen, they'll probably run to the right or away from you. So yeah, I've definitely missed survivors by going for reads when they didn't even know I was there. But if they do know, this will catch a lot of good survivors off guard. So definitely go for reads. Try it out, practice it, but know that you really have to know how far they're going to dodge. Even if you know that they're going to dodge to the right, say, you don't know how far until you've played against that survivor to know, what they tend to do. For whatever reason, many survivors have the crazy idea that they can survive a murderous bunny woman's killer rampage by getting in her face and moonwalking. When a survivor does this to you, they're challenging you to hit a melee hatchet. The primary aiming technique you should use here is tracking. Because there's hardly any travel time between when you release the hatchet and when it will hit them, rather than predicting their movements, you should track them. Steady aiming is also applicable here, but if the survivor is walking full 360s around you, you'll often have to move to keep them in frame. Unless you've already profiled how a survivor moves, I recommend only doing charged melee hatchets. Spend a few seconds following their movements with your mouse, and release when you feel like you'll be able to hit them, typically when their momentum slows from changing direction in a way that you can predict. It's kinda hard to describe these shots, so just practice them. If you keep missing your melee hatchets, never be afraid to M1, especially if the survivor is injured. However, if they're not, it's always more time efficient to hit a hatchet, then follow up with another hatchet M1, than it is to just go for an M1 and wipe your blade off and trod your little 4.2 ass over there. This point doubles for the add-on Oak Haft, which significantly reduces your shot cooldown and allows you to even miss and still get an M1 in a lot of situations. So go forth and show those moonwalking survivors that you will not be fooled with. Turns out the Huntress is a melee killer. Like any good force murderer, familiarity with the terrain is one of Huntress's greatest assets. Because of the fact that hatchets follow a predictable curve, you can theoretically hit most spots on any given map with a lobbed, or if you're really insane, charged hatchet with utter consistency. This technique involves labbing, the technical term for dicking around, setups. By positioning yourself near consistent objects on specific maps, you can guarantee shots on specific areas that you want to hit. Players of Counter-Strike and Valorant will be familiar with this idea. It's possible to use these lab setups predictively, but most often you'll want to lab setups on stationary objectives, such as generators, hooks, windows, pallets. Orbitals use this technique, as well as some gamer holes, which we'll talk about in the next video. But there are many shots that are not orbitals that still involve a lineup. The sky's the limit with this technique, or the ceiling, as the case often tends to be. When people start talking about hunters having an infinite skill ceiling, this is what they tend to mean. If you have a friend that's willing to chill in a custom game and tell you where your hatchets are landing, you can basically get this game down to a science. Rather than shooting someone while they're moving, it's often better to shoot them when they can't move. Animation locks happen when the survivor performs an action in your line of sight and are unable to move while they perform it. Honestly, this is my favorite type of shot. It's just so satisfying to punish survivors that think they could loop you like any other killer. Examples of this include vaulting a window or a pallet, dropping a pallet, or unhooking a teammate. Note that this does not apply to survivors that are on a gen, an exit gate, or that are healing, because they can cancel those actions at any time. Honestly, this one's less of a shot and more of a knowledge check. If a survivor drops a pallet right in front of you, it is impossible for them to dodge it. Similar things apply for windows, but be careful. Good survivors will fake running towards a window to get you to throw through it, then turn away at the last minute. You have enough time to wait until they start the vault animation, then release the hatchet. But be sure to compensate for possible uses of the perks Finesse and Resilience, because those could really fuck you up. Alright, so that concludes the first part of my two-part hatchet theory guide. I wanted to make this video to give newer huntresses kind of a repertoire, a glossary of shots to pull from when you're learning how to play Huntress. This is really just a way to think about playing this killer and doing these shots, so please stick around. Subscribe if this is interesting to you, if you want more thoughtful videos about the Huntress and about DBD. I also have a Twitch if you enjoyed this, if you like my vibe, as the kids say. Yeah, I stream every night except for Tuesdays and Thursdays over there, so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check that out. And yeah, part 2 of this video, which covers the advanced shots like orbitals. I know people love orbitals. Will be coming maybe in a couple weeks at this point, so be sure to check that out. Thank you all for watching. Yeah, appreciate y'all. It's difficult to stay awake, but please try, and I'll catch you either on my stream or in the next video. Thank you so much.